Thank you. Thank you. We will now move into a brief Q&A session. I ask our panelists to keep their responses brief so that we are able to get questions for each of you. Professor Kim, we'll begin with you. And I ask, how are Korean companies positioned to withstand long periods of uncertainty? As the professors describe, what is the most important thing from your perspective for Korean companies to consider when crisis-proofing?
저는 무엇보다도 기업이 우리 국민들에게, 소비자들에게 비전을 제시할 수 있어야 된다고 생각합니다. 미래의 비전을 제시할 수 있는 기업이 바로 소비자들에게 더 이상의 어려움보다는 새로운 기회와 또 도전을 통해서 더 많은 일자리를 창출할 수 있고, 그리고 이런 위기 상황 속에서 더욱더 발전할 수 있는 대한민국을 만들 거라고 확신합니다.
Thank you. Professor Katsos, the next question comes from our audience to you. And this is a question about trust and how companies and organizations can build trust, especially internally, to help them adjust to crisis.
It's a great question. Trust is something that we on the business side talk about quite a lot. It's very, very hard to build trust. I think something that we've seen in our research is that the best way to build trust is to be around. So what will often happen is companies will go into communities from the outside and their only presence will be in office. They won't have people walking around. They won't have people talking with the local community. They won't engage in these regular conversations with their employees or with local officials beyond just sort of the main government point person who they're talking to. A lot of this has to do with merging the digital world with the real life world. So too often we think that we can just build community and build trust online. And instead, what companies really need to reposition to is still focusing very, very heavily on the face-to-face communications and talking to people, even in the social distance world, but with the digital space as a way to help bolster that. Right? So you're not using the digital space alone, and you're not using the face-to-face space alone either. You're using them together and in concert to help build trust.
I know I could talk about this topic for a much longer time, but we do have to move on to our final question for Professor Miklyan. And this is, what can individuals do to find ways to thrive in the era of uncertainty? I like this question a lot.
Great, and thank you so much. This is another great question, and it's perhaps easy to answer, but very difficult to implement. And I think this really gets back to some of the comments that Professor Kim alluded to too. We're talking a lot about businesses here, but we have to recognize that crisis affects individuals just as well as it does companies. And a crisis-resilient company is a more stable and responsible employer. So you're asking what you can do as an individual. Within a company, you can be more supportive of these sorts of initiatives when you see them taking place, because sometimes they take longer to implement. They take longer to see results. They require more patience. And this is something that anyone at any level of a company can do. As an individual in society, one of the best things that we've seen individuals do is to at least temporarily put aside their skepticism if a company is actually trying to do the right thing, and try to help them do the right thing, as opposed to thinking that a company might not be able to or might not want to actually genuinely help their community. So that would be, from a couple of different perspectives, ways I feel that individuals could help in this process.
When we began this session, I invoked the image of the surfer atop the giant wave. And as we close all too briefly, I hope that in this conversation you have felt not only the fear of being perched atop that uncertainty, but the exhilaration of its possibility too. Thank you to all of you for joining us, to our professors on the panel, and for all of the conversation. To our hosts at SBS, thank you.